Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader and today we'll be focusing on the unwavering support given by Egypt to Libya and the executive authority in Libya after the meeting of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the past week with the head of the Libyan Presidential Council, Mohammed al-Manfi, earlier last week. On all levels, the regional and the international levels. And tonight, I'm honored to be having with me in the studio Engineer Hassan, Shabaan, the political analyst. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Anytime. We'll be starting straight away with a report giving us more information about the meeting that took place between President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the head of the Libyan Presidential Council, Mohammed al-Manfi, earlier last week in Cairo, and the accompanying delegation. So let's see it.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi affirmed Egypt's readiness to transfer its experience to the Libyan government in various fields. The president's remarks came as he met earlier last week with visiting head of the Libyan Presidency Council, Mohammed al-Manfi. President al-Sisi said such efforts, especially in the fields of security and police, aim to help the Libyan state restore national institutions and achieve security and stability. The president stressed Egypt's stance aiming at achieving the supreme interest of the Libyan state at the first place. He added that this stance stems from the need of preserving the unity of the Libyan territories and restoring the Libyan security and stability, as well as the need for Libya to have a unified national army. The president stressed the need to end foreign interference in Libya and to remove mercenaries and foreign fighters from the Arab country. Manfi, for his part, expressed appreciation for the Egyptian sincere support to Libya since the beginning of the crisis, especially through contributing to unifying the national army. This is in addition to the Egyptian vital role to transfer Egypt's developmental experience to Libya and Libya's benefit from the experience and capabilities of ancient Egyptian companies in this regard. The meeting reviewed frameworks of cooperation and coordination between Egypt and Libya during the coming period. They have agreed on the need to intensify consultation and mutual visits between officials of both countries. On the 6th of February, Libyan delegates at UN-facilitated talks chose Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibeh as Prime Minister designate, along with a three-member Presidency Council to govern the North African country until December elections.
Welcome back. As we did see in the past report, the support given by Egypt on all levels, the regional and the international levels, to Libya and the executive authority in Libya through the meeting of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the head of the Libyan Presidential Council, Mohammed al-Manfi, earlier last week. Engineer Hassan, Shabaan, how do you see, first of all, the progress made on the political scene in Libya?
Well, we've expected this about 2 months ago in this program, actually.
Yes.
We anticipated that the Libyans will probably reach a happy ending for their dispute. So I think what we're witnessing right now is a dream coming true in Libya. I think Libya is on the right track. The Libyans are, they understood that without, getting together, there won't be any chance to develop a modern Libya.
Yes.
Libya is a very rich country. It needs development. It needs hard work. And the dispute is not going to benefit anybody. Everybody is a loser in this particular dispute. So I think what happened in the last 45 days is excellent, since the Prime Minister Abdelhamid Dbeibeh visited Egypt, and he formed a new cabinet, chose competent ministers, represent all tribes and states of Libya. And then the head of the Presidential Council, Mr. Mohammed al-Manfi. This confirms the fact that Egypt and Libya is in the same trench. We're going to face the same challenges in the coming future. Libya have a task that we are going to have to support them, which is to develop Libya and help the Libyan people to restore their facilities, the oil facilities, refineries, and so forth, that was affected and neglected during this, whatever we like to call it, a civil war. Also, the task that Libya is facing right now is the foreign troops that are there in Libya because of certain agreements that were made between the earlier government, Al-Wafaq government, and certain countries like Turkey. I don't think that Libya needs all these foreign troops right now. I think the government, the new government, is working on uniting the army. It will be, Libya will have one army.
Speaking of the entities and the institutions that need rebuilding with the support and help of Egypt, as you've mentioned that we are having the same challenges now, Egypt and Libya. In your opinion, what are the entities of priority, the institutions of priority that need rebuilding now in Libya?
The Libyans need to feel secure. This is number one. Traveling in Libya should be safe. I think the Libyan government will have to pay attention to the services rendered to the Libyan people, health, education, and so forth. So I think the Libyan government will have a very ambitious program to rebuild and construct new hospitals all over Libya, to continue the program, the ambitious program they had to universities all over Libya. I think within a few years, if Libya was given the chance, it will actually regain its strength and its place in the international community. But the main issue is to pull out foreign troops.
Yes.
This is number one. Number two, to organize the pull out and the retreat of the mercenaries that actually were mobilized in the major cities, as well as the African mercenaries, militias that came in the south, and the south of Sabha, in Obari area especially. I think, yes, the organizing the pull of the troops, the Syrian militias and the Iraqi militias and so forth from cities like Misrata and Tripoli and all these cities will be possible. But the main task is the pull out of the African militias and mercenaries that were mobilized to the south of Sabha in Obari. Because once the decision is made to clear Libya from terrorism, I think the African militias and the mercenaries will probably infiltrate into the neighboring countries around Libya, and this will cause a big problem. So I call for the African Union actually to control the borders and to organize the evacuation of the African militias from the south of Libya, because otherwise we will have a big problem in our hands, and this means that this problem will be exported to other neighboring countries. We don't want to do this in the light of the initiative of the silence of
The guns. Yes.
So we don't want to actually send all these troops again to the neighboring countries, in spite of the fact they might belong. They're nationals from Senegal, from Nigeria,
Cameroon.
Whatever.
Yes.
So we need to organize the disarmament of these militias before they go back home.
Yes, and this would be happening, in your opinion, Engineer Hassan Shabaan, with the help and support of the African Union. But on the other hand, in Egypt, we had a very successful experience in terms of eliminating terrorism through a number of years, specifically ever since 2014 under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. How can we be exporting this experience and the expertise of Egypt in eliminating terrorism, in keeping security and stability of Libya as soon as possible and in as little time as possible in Libya?
First of all, step number one, the army should be unified under one leadership. So we then...
And that's not the case now in Libya.
They're working on it, actually, 5+5. They're working on it, and I think within a very short time,
yes,
we will see a unified Libyan army again. Once the army is unified, I think the task will be to face terrorism, same like what we had in Egypt. You know, the army and the police actually work together to annihilate the terrorism. So first step, to unify the army. Second step is to, once the situation is clear and you actually send back the militias to Syria and to Iraq, and you know, the African mercenaries will go back home, it will be clear where could be the locations that the army and the police should be watching, actually.
Yes.
Libya is a large country. It's a very large country.
Yes.
So we need to actually be very careful, because it will be very easy for some of these troops to, you know, take a shelter till the whole thing is over, and it could cause a headache to the new government. I think the new government with the army will be able to annihilate these troops completely.
Yes, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi always spoke about the importance of the security and stability of Libya as neighbors of Egypt. And as you've mentioned, two countries with the same challenges, and President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in the past meeting spoke specifically about the importance of building an army, building a strong army in Libya. How can we be helping in that, as we have one of the strongest armies in the region and in the world?
It's been always, actually, this cooperation always been with the Libyan army and the Libyan air forces. I myself served in one of the bases in Libya, the Aqba ibn Nafa base, actually, in Tripoli.
Yes.
And I think there is always training programs between the both armies, the Libyan army and the Egyptian army. And you know, Egypt always was there for Libya, and Libya was there for Egypt, by the way.
Yes.
I mean, in a lot of you know, people do not really realize that in the past, during the era of Colonel Gaddafi, Libya was always there for Egypt. So we have, you know, we have a heart for our brothers in Libya. We do not treat them as you know, a different entity. Egyptians and Libyans have very common memories, actually. So we need to revive this, and I think with the Egyptian expertise in fighting terrorism and development, I think Libya will benefit from this.
You've mentioned that Egypt and Libya are the same people with the same countries, just only borders between the two countries. This seems to be a policy of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry, that we are having Africa as brothers. We are treating Africans as brothers now. How do you see the change of policy under President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi towards Africa?
Well, we neglected Africa for some time. The last effective contact with Africa was Dr. Boutros Ghali, actually. He was a very sincere and dear friend to most of the African governments. And they really liked, Minister Boutros Ghali before he came Secretary of United Nations.
Yes.
And he had excellent relations, and this, of course, reflected on the Egyptian-African relations. Since President Sisi became, the leader of our country, he paid a lot of attention to the relationship with the African countries. Egypt is a very unique case. We enjoy a location that gives us the privilege of being part of Africa as well as the Middle East at the same time. We have a different, a culture that allows us to say that with loud mouths that we're Africans,
yes,
but again we're Arabs as well. So we have this very unique situation. I would like to see in the near future that our country, Egypt, could consider joining the Moroccan, the Union for North Africa, Morocco and Algeria, Tunisia, Libya, and I think it will be beneficial for us as Egyptians to join this union. It will also be beneficial for us to fulfill our dream and the idea that our president presented some time ago of forming a unified army to fight terrorism in north of Africa all the way to the equator. This, with the resources of these 5 countries, this will be feasible. We will have a very modern army, and this will secure the illegal immigration to Europe and control it very well with the naval activities.
Yes.
And it will actually annihilate all the terrorist activities coming from the West Africa and Central Africa. So I hope that the coming future will have some good news for us in our area.
And this brings us to the same point. Libya needs a strong army, and an army needs strong arms and weapons, and there is an arms embargo by the United Nations on Libya, and the European Union said that it would be enforcing it. How do you think this would be hampering the efforts of having a strong army in Libya?
Well, I think the international community actually made this decision, took this decision in light of certain circumstances that were there at that time of making the decision. Because, any additional armament would have been shipped to Libya would have increased the violence in Libya. You have to realize that huge armament warehouses have fallen in the hands of regular people and in the militias.
Yes.
Huge warehouses of armament. Also, you have to consider that Colonel Gaddafi gave arms to most of the people in Libya, claiming that he's forming a popular army. Al-Jaysh al-Shabi, and that actually created a very difficult situation to maintain security and stability. But I think the Libyan people are getting wiser. I think Egypt will always be in the back of Libya, and I think whatever Libya requires, we will be there, whether in the field of armament, training, of course, we will be able to support Libya internationally and give excuses for the requirement to control terrorist activities, because you cannot really fight terrorists without really armament. So you need the international community to be reasonable and consider canceling this decision.
So now would be the perfect timing to do that?
No, not yet. Once the
after the elections?
I would think partially after the mercenaries will be pulled out and all the foreign troops are pulled out, I think the army will require a refurbishment of his equipment. I mean, it doesn't make sense that you keep an army without really weapons. So I think partially there should be adequate equipment for this particular stage. After the elections in next December,
yes.
I think all the sanctions that were imposed over Libya will have to be lifted, and Libya will regain its normal life in the international community, just like an independent country, and have sovereignty.
But this means that there would be at least a year before the arms embargo would be lifted, and this means that defending the citizens against terrorism and fighting terrorism would be harder in this year.
Definitely. I think the unifying the army will probably improve the situation a little bit if you join both armies, east and west, in one large army. This will improve the armament condition and the manpower condition in the army.
Yes.
And I think, as I said, partially the sanctions will be lifted just to give the army enough equipment to face terrorists, because it doesn't really make sense that Libya will have an army and depend on others to defend the Libyan people. So the Libyan army will defend the Libyan people against terrorism, and we will have the same slogan like we had in Egypt 10 years ago. The army and the people is in one hand.
Yes. President Al-Sisi, during the meeting with the head of the Libyan Presidential Council, he mentioned the importance of ending the foreign intervention and, of course, the withdrawal of the mercenaries. And a number of countries, they have troops on the ground in Libya, like Russia and Turkey. How do you think this would be happening, ending foreign intervention in Libya?
Well, I think if a country like Turkey have good intentions toward Libya, I think they have to prove it. And to prove good intentions, they have to withdraw, because there is no point in having Turkish troops on Libyan soil for no good reason. I mean, the dispute is over, and Libya is not exposed to any threats.
Yes.
So why having foreign troops on Libyan soil? So I think all these countries that have their troops in Libya will have to consider seriously withdrawing from Libya. I have to mention that, of course, all these political moves and the military action have an economical aspect, actually. Yes. So Libya is a very rich country, and let me put it this way: if Libya is back and will have their oil facilities on stream, the Libyan gas will have an impact over the Russian gas that goes to Europe. So the Russians are in Libya just to observe what's happening they don't want to face...
Assessing the competition.
Right. I don't think that, the Russians really care very much about the Libyan people, but they care
the interests
mainly
of their own countries.
Yes, definitely, Mother Russia. So actually, this is my opinion when it comes to the Russian troops. The Turkish troops, at one time, the relationship between Egypt and Turkey was, a little bit hot. I don't think it is as severe as it used to be. And Egypt have proven, over a span of time that...
President Sisi drew the red line.
Right. And we have good intentions. We did not really interfere. We respect our brothers in Libya, and we did not really have one soldier across the borders.
Yes.
So if the Libyans wanted us to be there, we will be there. But I don't think that was necessary at one time. Libyans, worked very fine, and they're on the edge, on the verge of having our Libya back to the normal state. So I think, everybody will have to prove good intentions. I don't think also that Turkey could have mobilized to Libya without really green light from the partners in the NATO. I mean, you have to consider that Turkey is a member in NATO.
Yes.
And, they couldn't just mobilize their troops to Libya without really a green light from NATO. So I think, again, the authority that will tell Turkey to pull its troops will be, again, NATO. So the NATO will have to decide that we don't really think that the presence of Turkey in Libya is that essential. Libya is not exposed to any threats from outside. So the Libyan army will be trained and organized and have the right equipment within a couple of years. So no need to have foreign troops on the Libyan side. You have to realize that one of the main achievements that Colonel Gaddafi achieved actually was taken over the Tobruk naval base, air base that the British were actually using at one time, and the Wales base in Tripoli, and now it is Aqba ibn Nafa. Actually, it doesn't make sense that you take steps to the back. You need to move forward.
Yes.
So I don't think that the Libyans will appreciate repeating the scenario again of having foreign troops on the Libyan soil. So let's keep our fingers crossed. And I'm sure that the Libyans are wise enough. They actually learned a lot from the experience in the last 10 years.
Yes, the United Nations estimates that 20,000 fighters are on the ground in Libya. How do you think they will be leaving Libya in a safe way, as you've mentioned?
I think the number is more than that. I think...
At least?
The number is more than that. I think this number is probably in the north and the coastal areas, Misrata, Sirte, and all of the Tripoli.
Yes.
But again, I think in the south there is a major problem. As I mentioned before, the African mercenaries in the south, and by the way, it's not really African mercenaries only, because one actually witnessed what happened in the north of Syria and Iraq. The number of casualties that were inflicted to ISIS during regaining control over the north of Syria and Iraq was minimal. Where is all these troops gone? They were vanished in thin air. Actually, most of these troops actually were mobilized to Turkey, and from Turkey all the way across Gibraltar to Mauritania, and from Mauritania, a small village in Mauritania where the meeting point, the rendezvous was in Khalda, a small village in Mauritania, and all of these troops actually were mobilized across the Great Desert to Obari. So we have a big problem in Libya, and we will have to face it. I mean, the international community will have to face this problem, because these mercenaries will be like a, like a dagger in the back of the Libyans.
And which entity or institution should be guaranteeing such immobilization of the foreign fighters and the mercenaries from Libya to other parts of the world?
If there were good intentions, the party that financed the mobilization and the training and accommodation in Libya, each one of these people are getting like $750 a month with full board. Whomever is financing this operation should blow the whistle again to these troops to be reorganized and ready to leave. This is if we have good intentions. If not, I think the United Nations and the NATO and the African Union will have to get together and control this mission, because we have to clean the mess in Libya that these militias have created, actually.
Yes, and speaking of cleaning the mess in Libya, a number of foreign ministers from Europe, from Germany, from France, from Italy, they visited Libya in the past week as well to be finding better solutions of having the December elections as smooth as possible in the North African country. We'll be having more information about such a meeting in Libya in the upcoming report.
The foreign ministers of France, Italy and Germany met with the Libyan officials earlier last week to show support for the country's newly elected transitional authorities, who are expected to lead the country through general elections by the end of 2021. The European foreign ministers also called on mercenaries and foreign fighters to leave the country immediately. Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio told reporters at a joint news conference with his counterparts that they were in Libya to express support to the political transition, reiterating their country's willingness to cooperate with the government of national unity. The three foreign ministers stressed that foreign fighters and mercenaries should immediately leave the country in order to ensure the full implementation of ceasefire agreement inked on October. Earlier this month, the UN Security Council called for countries with troops and mercenaries to withdraw them without delay. The UN has estimated there are 20,000 foreign fighters in Libya, including Syrians, Turks, Sudanese and Russians. Italy's Di Maio affirmed the commitment of the three European nations to continue enforcing the UN arms embargo on Libya through their naval mission in the Mediterranean Sea. EU top diplomats also stressed the need to reopen the country's Mediterranean coastal road linking the east and the west. For her part, Libya's Foreign Minister Najla Mangoush said she had discussed with her European counterparts the reopening of their embassies and consular services on Libyan soil. On Tuesday, French President Emmanuel Macron announced that his country will reopen its embassy in Tripoli next week in a show of support to the newly elected transitional government.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and that was a report about the trip by the foreign ministers of Italy, Germany and France to Libya in the past week. As we've mentioned as well in the first part of the program, the meeting of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with the head of the Libyan Presidential Council, Mohammed al-Manfi, in Egypt. Engineer Hassan Shabaan, the political analyst, is with us here tonight. Engineer Hassan Shabaan, how do you see the efforts, on the other hand, of the European Union in general, and more specifically France, Italy and Germany, to be leading Libya into the December elections?
I'm very happy to see these efforts actually exerted. The European presence is very important in Libya. Libya enjoys excellent relations with Italy especially. The Italians have very good relations with the Libyans, and they have a lot of investments in Libya. Hopefully, this will help restoring peace and stability. You have to consider also that all these European countries are members in the NATO.
Yes.
So they are...
So the stability and security of Libya, is it in the favor of those countries, or the chaos that we have seen?
Definitely. Especially these countries, France, Italy and Germany, have an interest in regaining stability in Libya because they've enjoyed excellent relations in the past, and they want to resume this. They have a lot of investments. Libya is a good chance for these three countries to cooperate with Libya to develop and have French or Italian companies or German companies working in Libya in various fields actually. So Libya represents a good investment chance to the European countries, considering the pandemic and the slowdown of the economy of Europe and so forth. So I think having a country like Libya with ambitious development programs will be a good chance for the European countries to refresh its economy again. I think definitely these countries have an interest in regaining stability and security in Libya. We have also to consider the United States.
Yes.
The United States now had this tragic incident when the U.S. ambassador was assassinated some time ago during this chaos in Libya. I think the U.S. definitely will have a very firm stand, in regard of regaining stability and security, because they had this bad experience. The mob actually killed the American ambassador. So I think in the American government, the U.S. government should prove to the people of the U.S. That we will regain stability and help Libya punish the militias and the mercenaries that actually committed this crime and assassinated the American ambassador in Libya. I think the environment is very suitable right now for the Libyans actually to give up the disputes and wise up, and with the support of the European countries, with the approval of the U.S. This will give no chance for the Russian company over there actually that have these troops to remain in Libya. So I think that the situation will be different within the next 6 months. I think by the coming elections on the 24th of December of this year, Libya will be on the verge of a new era. We have to consider also that the Prime Minister, Mr. Abdelhamid al-Dabaiba, was very much involved in programs of developing Libya before the...
Speaking about the political credentials of the head of the Libyan Presidential Council, Mohammed al-Manfi, and Prime Minister of Libya, Abdelhamid Dabaiba, how do you see them, the political credentials until the December elections in the country?
I think, they are, it's a good match actually, because, the head of the Presidential Council is like acting the president of the country, and Mr. Abdelhamid al-Dabaiba is a prime minister. So
yes.
The executive responsibilities are the responsibilities of Mr. Dabaiba, and this will lay a new foundation for a real democratic system that the Libyans required for some time. They were actually not given the chance in the past to do this. Mr. Abdelhamid al-Dabaiba is an engineer, and he's very well experienced. As I said, he was involved in development programs, very ambitious development programs. Hopefully, these programs will be revived again and materialize very soon. Maybe the economical situation in Libya is not as good as as it used to be, because the Libyan treasury is not really in a very healthy condition right now. It requires to control the resources, the oil, the gas. Also, the central bank will have to be unified and become the central bank of the whole of Libya. And the budget will have to be studied very well, and the resources, the whole thing. There is a definite and economical challenge that faces Libya to be able to have the resources to, make the Libyans feel that they are serious and putting something on the ground, like what's happening in Egypt. There is no doubt that within a few years since President Sisi took over, actually, when he assumed office, he actually, created a lot of activities where, we did not enjoy this activities in the last 30 or 40 years, actually.
Yes.
The country is...
in different sectors.
Completely. And he did not leave one sector without really handling. So I think if the Libyans will benefit from our experience in Egypt, it will be, very beneficial for the Libyans, and we will be able to supply them with the labor required, and this will also have a good, return on our economy, where you're going to have a big number of labor in Libya, and they will, the transfer of their funds to Egypt will be, effective. So I think we're going to see something very interesting in the coming future. Sincerely, I hope that Libya will regain stability and become the Libya that we knew a long time ago.
The cabinet of Prime Minister Abdel Hamid Dbeibeh in Libya, how do you see the qualification of the ministers, the qualifications of the ministers to be leading the country until December? A very short time, but a very challenging time as well.
You see, this is almost a temporary cabinet.
Yes.
You know, in order for Mr. Dbeibeh to cross this period, he had to, get all the tribes and all the areas in Libya to be represented in this. It's a tribal community, so he had to fulfill the requirements of this tribal attitude and have everybody represented in his cabinet. Definitely, he considered the qualifications of the ministers, and he assigned a lady for the foreign affairs, actually. And this is an excellent move because she's very qualified, and this is a good indication that there is a new way of thinking in Libya. I think, in spite of the fact that this is a short time, I mean, you have like 9 months only for this cabinet, you know.
Yes.
I think this will be like a transition period. Hopefully, this 9 months will give a good impression to the Libyans who will be able to serve the country in its best way. I think, again, Mr. Dbeibeh is very well experienced, and he will be a good servant for the Libyan people. He is, as I said, a technical person, and he will be able to assist in the program of developing New Libya.
Head of the Libyan Presidential Council, Mohammed Al-Menfi, chose Egypt, France and Turkey to be visiting in the first 11 days of office. How do you see those selections?
I think he had to. I mean, if I was in his shoes, I would have chosen these 3 countries. He could have actually considered the U.S., but due to the fact that the U.S. have a new president, I didn't think that could have been a good idea for the time being. But again, Egypt, France, and Turkey is a key players in the Libya, not on the Libyan affair, but in the whole situation,
region, yes.
Right? So Turkey is very much involved because Mr. Faiz al-Sarraj have signed agreements with Turkey. I think the new Libyan parliament will have to review all these agreements one more time, and they might have to reconsider some of these agreements, and Mr. Menfi will have to play a lot of politics to keep everybody happy. He doesn't want to offend Turkey. Of course, you know, Mr. Faisal signed an agreement or a treaty, whatever it is, and he had to reason with the Turkish government about what could happen if they reconsider some of the agreements that they had with Turkey in the earlier stage before the new era. And of course, his visit to Egypt is to hear from our president his point of view, because we always supported the idea of, you know, getting the Libyans together. Libyans will have to solve their own problems without really imposing anything from outside. And this is really what happened. I think also he wanted to hear from, you know, for himself from our president that Egypt is all for Libya. We will stand with them all the way. It is our duty to do so, because if Libya will be exposed to any type of threat, this means that Egypt will get a share of this threat. We have to also remember that, there were several trials to cross the border, the western borders to Egypt from Libya by terrorist groups, and it caused some problems at that time. So the security of Egypt is the security of Libya, and I think Egypt will put all its resources to assist the Libyan new government and our brothers in Libya.
And finally, focusing on Libya from the inside, do you sense a sense of unity between the Libyan factions now that they want to be reaching the December elections safely and securely?
Definitely, definitely. I think in spite of the fact that few individuals had their own ambitious hopes and dreams, but they have to reason and put this aside as long as this is a necessity to regain stability and security in Libya before we play politics. Playing politics in this particular time might cost Libya dearly. So I think the Libyans are wise enough to reason, to regain control, and then after the December 24th, they will be able to have a new parliament, a new constitution, whatever it is. But right now, I think the Libyans are very wise, and they have reached a point that they don't want to lose. Yes, this is a beginning of a new era in Libya, and any wrong move will be remembered in history, with a negative,
as a mistake, yes. Engineer Hassan Shabaan, the political analyst, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Anytime. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.